Good afternoon, Louisiana. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Roundup here on bet.nola.com. I'm Zach Ewing. That is Spencer, the guru, Urquhart, and he is here to drop some knowledge on you as we continue our weekly preview for Fantasy Football 2022. And today we're actually going to take a little bit of a detour from fantasy football, Spencer, and go into some player props. And I know you spent a lot of time yesterday, over the weekend, over the last week, looking at some of these player props and saying, seeing where value can be made. And yes, this can help you in fantasy because it might mean that these players are guys to target in drafts or auctions. But more to the point, what we did is we took some Caesar Sportsbook totals, yardage totals, and told you over or under, and you're going to hopefully make some people some money.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, hopefully we can hit on these props because there's a lot of money to be made with all the different options available. And I try to go with different ones, or it's just you got to see, with how the off season went for these guys. Like, are they getting better situations? Are they getting worse situations? How are these rookies gelling with their new quarterbacks? And there's all kind of different variables factored in. But yeah, just trying to digest it all and come up with some values because there's definitely something to be had with these props.
I mentioned Caesar Sportsbook. We are powered by the Caesar Sportsbook, and like to remind you that if you have not signed up, you can do so at any point and get your first bet basically taken care of. If you win it, fantastic. You just basically doubled your money or close to it. If you lose it, you get however much you bet straight back into your account in the form of bonus cash up to $1,500. So go to NOLA.com/Caesars to take care of that promo. So let's get to some props. This is actually an appropriate day to do this because Caesars actually sent out an email talking about some of the rushing props that had gotten the most money, had gotten the least money, that sort of thing. And it's interesting. We'll talk about some of those rushers. A couple of them are on your list, Spencer. But where we're going to start is with passing yardage props. And what you've done is you've gotten a list for passers and rushers of 5 or 6 overs, 5 or 6 unders that you like, and then wide receivers, you kind of went hog wild on us and have about 10 of each. So we'll do double the wide receivers. But that'll be our show for today, and we'll kind of get back into the main fantasy lane next week. But let's dig right into it. Let's get to some of the passing props. Here's some of Spencer's best bets for over or under passing yardage. So we've got the player, we've got what the current total is at Caesar Sportsbook as of this morning. And then, Spencer, whether you like the over or the under.
For sure. I guess I'll start by going over the overs I like. I like Derek Carr's over a lot because I feel like with the Raiders, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts in the AFC West. Plus, he's got the addition of Devontae Adams there. So he's be wanting to throw more, of course, with Devontae there. I know Josh McDaniels coming from Belichick he likes to run the football, but I don't think he's going to be able to run it as much as he'd like, being that there's a tough schedule, going to be a lot of high-scoring affairs, and plus the way their personnel is, it's going to make sense for them to be throwing it. Also, like Jameis Winston's over a lot because I feel like with the Saints added weapons, man, Jameis he's going to rack up yards through the air, especially with I like Chris Olave as well. We'll get to him later, but I feel like he's going to be able to stretch the field a little more this year. Last year, he was kind of just a little bit, on a leash per se, where this year I think he'll really get to get unleashed and won't be a super high volume passer, but I think he'll pass for enough yards to definitely hit over that 36-25 mark. And then Joe Burrow and Kirk Cousins. Burrow I like because I feel like he's still got untapped potential. I still feel like Joe Burrow's got room for growth there, and he's got plenty of weapons. Kirk Cousins, better system, plenty of weapons there, with Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, those two with their yak yards really help help out their quarterbacks with their totals. And then Trevor Lawrence, kind of like Cousins, better situation, new head coach, should be able to take a big step forward in year 2.
So those are 5 overs, and a couple of high totals there that did not scare you off. Derek Carr's and Joe Burrow's both up over 4,300 yards. Of course, we see passers every year get close to 5,000 yards. A big part of this, Spencer, is the guy's got to stay healthy, right? If you're betting overs, you're part of the risk that you're taking on is that, like Jameis Winston last year, well, he would have went well over 3,625 yards had he played all 17 games. As we all know, he only played about 6.5 games. So if that happens to one of these guys, your bet is just about dead in the water. So that's part of the risk you're taking on here.
Yeah, good thing with quarterbacks. I mean, quarterbacks for the most part generally stay healthy, which is why with running backs, there's a lot of. I think I may have put some more unders for running backs because there's with the injuries at that position, it's tough for a lot of overs to hit. But with QBs, I feel a little better since they tend to stay healthy.
Uncle Big Nick wants to know if you come draft as fantasy, maybe for a percentage of his winnings, especially if you can. And for how about like an extra $50 for every place higher than Jim he finishes in the standings?
Yeah, we can work something out, Nick. Let me know.
Yeah, we would love that. We might broadcast that live, in fact. So anyway, what I was saying is, because of the risk of injury, these numbers might be a little bit lower than if you just average out, oh, well, Derek Carr should throw for 265 yards a game times 17 games. Well, he's going to go over. It's not quite that simple because you have to factor in the chance that he won't play all 17 games. Joe Burrow last year, for instance, was healthy and went over that total, by the way, but he didn't even play in week 17. So even though week 18, excuse me. So even though he was healthy, he did not play in all 17 games. So that's part of it too. And that's part of the risk that works in your favor, perhaps, if you bet unders. So tell us about some of the unders you have down here.
Right. Yeah, I took a lot of the running quarterbacks that tend to be a little more injury prone for unders because I feel like a lot of these guys are, even if they do stay healthy, they're going to be very dependent on their legs. Like Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, and Trey Lance to me all kind of fit that bill because they're guys that they're just not really pass first guys. I mean, their totals are set pretty low, so you might think, oh, well, they're so low, they're gonna have to go over. But it's one of those things. I'm not really feeling like they're gonna get much over 3,000 yards passing because they're gonna be so dependent on the run. And between if they miss a few games, that's gonna hurt them as well. And I'm not really feeling them as far. I mean, I'm feeling them pretty unders, And then Russell Wilson too. I feel like his total might be the best value on this board because with Russell Wilson, he's an efficiency guy. He's not a volume passer. I don't see that changing just because he's going to Denver. If anything, I think might be even more like that because Denver's defense is very solid, better than Seattle's has been the past few years. And he's just not a volume guy. The same thing with Mac Jones, being on the Patriots. I just don't see them throwing a whole lot, and thus I see his totals not being too high yardage wise.
Glendola from Louisville checking in. How are you today? If you're here, tell us where you're watching from. If you've got a question for Spencer, either fantasy or a player prop that you had your eye on, let us know in the comments and we'll get to you as soon as we can on these. Spencer, what is your methodology for looking at these? Are you numerical with how you're trying to determine what's a good value and what's not? Is it more based on feel? How do you determine whether you see a value in the over or the under on these?
I go back and I look at their statistical trends throughout their careers. I pulled up pretty much everyone's Pro Football Reference page and just kind of scan their season trends from year to year and just kind of see how for the younger guys that don't really have as much data, just pull up their more recent data. Even for the veterans, just pull up probably, their year by year totals and then their 2021 game logs, kind of see how they're, get their more recent data, obviously gets more credence and just kind of digest all that. And then also look at what additions, like I mentioned earlier about the offseason, like for quarterbacks, did they get new weapons? How's their offensive line looking? Their coaches, their coaching staff, play callers, there's a lot to factor in, but trying to do my best to find those values because there's, like I said, there's a lot to be had. You just gotta do your research though. It's better to, at least it's to me. You can't just pick randomly, but you ain't gonna make any money doing that.
Yeah, you don't just want to go based on your emotion or, oh, he'll have a good year. You got to look at that number. And
Yeah,
I
for
bring
real.
I bring that up as we go into the rushing, because the yardage total at Caesars that has changed the most of anyone, and you may not have even known this, Spencer, when you started your research, but it's Trey Lance. His rushing yardage total started at 475.5, and it is all the way up to 625.5.
Oh,
So a
wow.
lot of money coming in on Trey Lance to go over his
Yeah.
rushing yardage total. But as we see here, you still like it at 625.5. You still think that's not enough.
Yeah, I still like it. I still like it because I feel like he's somebody that's gonna, if he can stay healthy, he's gonna rack up 700-800 rushing yards. So man, I wish I'd have known about that a few weeks ago. That would have been an extreme bargain, because then even if he'd have gotten hurt, he'd probably still hit it. Where now it's like if he misses like 1 or 2 games, he could still. But yeah, if he misses more than that, it's gonna be tough. But as long as he stays healthy, I still like that there at 625.5 to go over, because he's still very raw as a passer, where I think there's going to be a lot of designed runs in Shanahan's offense for him. Kind of like if you want to go way back, like when he was the Redskins OC back with RG3 back when he was a rookie.
Back when there was a team with that name.
Yep. Yeah. So the Washington team. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, with Trey Lance, look, you know, all it takes is a couple games. He goes over 100 yards. He has a big run, and you're almost halfway to your total right there.
Yeah.
And then he just, pieces together some 40s and 50s and 60s the rest of the time. 625, still not that high. Obviously, you want to be careful as that number continues to grow. If you are going to bet the over. Elsewhere here, one I'm a little surprised to see, Spencer, is Josh Jacobs. He has not been getting a lot of positive headlines in training camp, but you still think he could go over that 725.5.
Yeah, I feel like this is a perfect chance to buy on Josh Jacobs, because if you go back Josh McDaniels' history, there's usually at least one running back in the committee that goes for over 800 yards. Last year was Damian Harris, with the Patriots. I'm thinking Jacobs. I'm thinking he gets around that mark. I know he misses a few games here and there, but he's a guy that I think's getting slept on, because I don't see him just going away as far as being the go-to guy. I mean, the rookie Zamir White was only a 4th-round pick. I don't see him just coming in there and taking the job. And then all the other guys, they have like Drake, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden. Those are all just 3rd-down options. So unless Zamir White really lights the world on fire, I'm thinking Jacobs. I think that's a bargain, because I think he gets at least 800.
All right. And how about some of these rushing total unders? You talk about Trey Lance getting a lot of carries. The name down there at the bottom, very interesting. Elijah Mitchell, that may cost him some yards.
Yeah. I hate to say it, because Elijah Mitchell's one of my guys, went to UL, fellow Raging Cajun, but I think that total's way too high at 900.5. I think he's probably the best value as far as the unders. To me, that's an easy under, because he's just got so many injuries that have piled up on him, at a young age. Unfortunately, like last year, he dealt with I think 3 or 4 different injuries throughout the year. He had a great year. He ran for over 900 last year, which was amazing considering all the injuries. I just don't see him being able to overcome that this year, especially with them. They're planning on scaling his workload back to try to have him not keep getting all these injuries. And with that, it's just, he's not going to be able to get the big totals, I don't think.
Yeah. And by the way, some breaking news here on the Fantasy Roundup, both from a player prop perspective, say that 10 times fast, and also from a fantasy perspective. Jets quarterback Zach Wilson, arthroscopic knee surgery today. It was deemed a success. He is going to come back this season. Good news for the Jets, and I think for their skill position players. However, he is not going to start the season available. He will not be available for a couple of weeks, maybe as much as 3-4 weeks into the regular season. And so that'll be the Joe Flacco show in New York. That sort of thing for player props, you're just not going to see Zach Wilson available to bet on, because it's too difficult to determine how many games he'll play in. And so he will not be available to bet on, but it could affect how you view some Jets position players too. And I don't know what your opinion of Joe Flacco is. Whatever it is, it has to be less than it was a few years ago. And I'm not sure it was ever that high.
Yeah, if anything, I think the third stringer might end up getting some reps there to Mike White, depending on how Flacco, if Flacco really struggles, because White last year in limited action actually was fairly decent, in relief of Zach Wilson. I feel like he's offers more upside than Joe Flacco, maybe a little more turnover prone. But as far as like the potential to for the skill players, I feel like White would be better.
Do the Jets actually realize you're not supposed to turn the ball over? Because I don't, maybe that's a positive for them. I don't know. I'm not sure. Watching them the last 10 years, if that's part of their strategy. All right, let's move on to pass catchers. And boy, you liked a lot of pass catchers, and I've split them into two slides here. Didn't do all the overs on one and all the unders on the other or anything like that. I just did, kind of half and half on each slide. So let's get started and dig into it. First guy on your list, Allen Robinson in a new home. The third guy, that is a robust total of 1,350.5 yards. But we talked on Bayou Bets yesterday, Spencer. You think Justin Jefferson could lead the league in receiving yards? Could be the offensive player of the year. I mean, you are all in on this guy.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I feel like that total's set a little too low, because last year I believe he had I think around 15 to 1,600, and I don't see that going down. So I feel like this total is that's one of the best values on this board. And he was durable. He played all 17. So I feel like that's very much a bargain. I feel like a lot of these are bargains. I really like a lot of these receiving props. I mean, like CD Lamb without much there in Dallas, he should easily get 1,400 yards if healthy. A-Rob with the Rams outside of Cooper Kupp, not much there. I think he'll crack 1,000. Allen Lazard with all the opportunities in Green Bay should easily go over that. Travis Kelsey without Tyreek Hill, I feel like should definitely get 1,100 to 1,200 yards. Surprised his total is that low considering how consistent he's been over the years of getting around that 1,100 to 1,200 yard mark. And then Juju also with the Chiefs, a little risky being that he's been very injury prone in recent years, but now that he's with Patrick Mahomes, as long as he's healthy, I see him going over that for sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised on those two Chiefs totals myself. I don't know if the thought is that Pat Mahomes will be spreading the ball around more in Kansas City than he was, but Tyreek Hill's yards have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So and obviously the defense is going to pay more attention to some other guys, but Juju in particular at 800, if he stays healthy, you don't think he can average 50 yards a game? I mean, 50 yards a game is 850. So you'd be over with some room to spare. So that one sticks out to me too. Tell us about your unders, at least the four that are on this slide. A little bit of a theme here, maybe some target share problems for these four guys.
Yeah. Gabriel Davis is not a talent issue. It's just a target share issue because the Bills have a lot of other weapons. Stephon Diggs, Jamison Crowder, Isaiah McKenzie, Dawson Knox, hell, even the rookie Khalil Shakir been getting some praise over there. So I like Gabe Davis for fantasy, but I think he's more of a guy that's like, I like him because he's got a lot of red zone ability. If maybe more of a touchdowns guy. I don't see him being a big yardage guy though. I don't see him going much over 700 to 800 yards. And I mean, his 875.5 is very rich. I feel like tempting you with the Bills offense. He's now the new outside threat and the opposite Diggs, but I'm not buying him to go over that high of a total. And then, with London, I don't like either because with Atlanta, Pitts, I think is the main guy. And in London, the main thing with London too, injuries. He's already got hurt in the preseason, and then Kadarius Toney as well. It's like if you're going to probably be injured, then I'm not going your over. If anything, I'm going under.
Yeah, quite frankly, I'm not sure Atlanta will throw the ball all that much, and so Pitts may get some yardage, but everywhere else, I don't know. Marcus Mariota at quarterback, they may be a run-heavy team. We shall see, and they may not move the ball at all. By the way, that's a distinct possibility there in Atlanta. They do not high on that offense at all. Spencer, before we get to the last slide, how many of these do you bet? Because obviously, we're going to present about 40 player props. Actually, I think it's exactly 40 player props. It's difficult for anyone without a large bankroll to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to put one betting unit on 40 different props, and I'm okay waiting until the end of the season to cash the ones that I cash. So you want to pick and choose. And so we're not telling you to bet all of these. We're giving you some possibilities, some value. Spencer says, pick the ones you like, bet the ones you like. What's your personal take on how many you would bet?
I probably would say, if I'd probably go with at least probably just like half of these, depending on your bankroll. If you're not looking to spend a whole lot, probably then just like 1 passing, 1 rushing, and 2 receiving. But if you're feeling a little more like you want to try more, then you could do 2 passing, 2 rushing, 4 receiving. Or if you're really feeling it, just go with all of these, because I feel like they're all values. But I would for most bettors out there that are just looking for a little bit of action, kind of get your feet wet with these. Because I know a lot of bettors like the live action, where some of us though prefer the season long these props. I kind of prefer that because it's like you get to really see how it plays out over the course of the year. But yeah, if you're not like all in with wanting to do that, just pick a few that you like. Just go with if you like LSU or whatever, you could take Jefferson and Burrow and just kind of just see how they do.
Yeah, I mean, this is also a discussion just for general futures bets, which we've talked about on the shows on Bayou Bets plenty of times over the last month. I mean, look, yeah, I think there's more value in futures than there is week to week for the most part. Maybe not more value, but you're not getting the lines aren't necessarily as tight, especially if you get to them early. And so I do put some money on futures. I think it's a lot of fun. The downside to it is that money, even if you win, that money is being held in a bet slip for months on end. And so
yeah,
you do want to leave enough to bet week to week, because we all like to do that. We all want to have the opportunity to seize values that present themselves. But player props they're just sort of another quiver in another arrow in the quiver, I should say, where you can pick the ones you like. I wouldn't bet all 40, but if you see 5 you like, 10 you like, listen, we said if your bankroll is big enough, Uncle Big Nick, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think yours is
ahead.
big enough, Uncle Big Nick, with all those golf DFS tournaments you won. So yeah, bet
and
them
once
all,
that 16-way under parlay hits, 1.7 million or whatever it was, you can show us all your bet slips as you take us to World Series games. So
right,
we're all here for it. Page 2 of your receiving bets, Guru, we have the guy we mentioned, Kyle Pitts, 950.5. You're okay. He's a tremendous talent. I like that too, because I do feel like Marcus Mariota, like we said, not a very good offense. Kyle Pitts could become the security blanket. He's going to get a lot of double coverage, but he's a guy who could beat it.
Yeah, all these guys, like the ones that have on the over, all have a lot of opportunities. I feel, Pitts for sure. I think he'll go well over 1,000, being the primary target in Atlanta. Mike Evans, I know there's a lot of mouths to feed there, but he's still the go-to guy. But Chris Godwin coming off the knee injury, and Julio and Russell Gage being new, I think he'll go over that. Dalton Schultz, I feel like is really a bargain, being that Amari Cooper is no longer there. I see him getting 800-900 receiving yards. Chris Olave, I think, is a good value, being that he's going to be stretching the field, getting some yards after the catch, being Jameis's primary deep threat. Darnell Mooney is more just a volume thing. He's just going to get so much volume from the Bears. I know it's a crappy offense, but as I mentioned in my Bears fantasy post that's going to drop this afternoon, I just feel like he's about all they got as far as reliable weapons. And then T. Higgins is a great field stretcher for Joe Burrow. Fun fact about Higgins, if he'd have stayed healthy last year, he'd have been not too far behind Jamar Chase in yardage. So injuries have kind of been a problem for him. But if Higgins is healthy, he's going over that total.
Yeah, let's dig into a couple of those, because I like Higgins because as good as Jamar Chase is, and believe me, he's outstanding. He's one of the best 5 receivers in the NFL. His yardage total is way up there at like 1,400. A little bit of the narrative switch to Chase, and I think you're right. I think people forget how good T. Higgins is.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So that's one thing I like, and then the other one I want to talk about a little bit is Chris Olave. Obviously, the total here is fairly low, 675.5. And when Jameis Winston doesn't want to stretch the field, he's going to be the target. Now, other than that, the thing Chris Olave may not get is the consistent yardage, because those underneath targets are going to go to Michael Thomas. They're going to go to Jarvis Landry. They may even go to Taysom Hill. So that one is a little bit more risk reward for me, but you see him catching enough long ones to get over 675.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, receptions. He might not have as many receptions, but I think for yards, he'll definitely get over that because he's gonna do a lot with each reception. I think he'll be kind of similar to the way Mike Williams is with the Chargers. He doesn't usually get a whole lot of receptions, but he makes the most of them because he gets a lot of yards per reception.
Yeah, and that's it's super interesting because if you think about the way defenses will handle the Saints, well, you got to have coverage underneath for Thomas and Jarvis Landry and for Alvin Kamara. You got to keep an eye on him too, and so there will be some opportunities to try to take the top off of that defense. Whether Olave and Winston can take advantage of that, well, that's what you're betting on. But I agree with you. The opportunities will be there. 4 guys at the bottom. 3 good picks, and then you also went under on Treylon Burks again. No, I'm just kidding. Look, Treylon Burks, the headlines have not been good out of Titans camp. I mean, there's been a lot of controversy, a lot of, he doesn't look like he's in shape. He's not getting the targets. I personally see that as an opportunity to buy low on a guy that I like in Treylon Burks. But alternatively, this could become a lost season for the rookie where he only has a couple hundred yards.
Yeah, a lot of rookies I find are just they get too gassed up. People get too hyped up over these rookies, man. Skye Moore, I just don't see him getting enough volume there. You've got Juju, MVS, Hardman, Kelsey, even CEH, running backs getting some looks. I don't think there's going to be enough for him to get a whole lot of yards. And then Garrett Wilson with the sketchy QB situation with the Jets and Elijah Moore being the focal point. I just don't see him having a very productive rookie year. And then Trey Burks is just, with the Titans not being very pass friendly and the way he's, I think he's going to get off the really slow start. Might be able to pick up enough steam in the second half to get it, but I doubt it. I don't think he's going to get more than about 600 to 700. And then Devontae Smith, I don't like either, being that they brought in AJ Brown, and now that the Eagles are a run first offense with Jalen Hurts. That's just the way they are. And I don't see Devontae. I don't see them producing 2 800+ yard receivers.
Yeah. All about opportunity, all about trying to project what the offense will look like. And can be a ton of fun. Some of these player props, by the way, are available mid-season. They do change as the weeks come and go. Now, it's much more difficult to find value sometimes then because everyone can see how the players are being used in the offense, and you have to project changes in how that might happen. Guy that comes to mind is Deandre Swift last year, who had 400 receiving yards over the first 8 weeks of the season. Maybe it was more than that. And then he had like 100 the last half of the season because the Lions changed offensive coordinators and stopped throwing to him. So, things can change. You can't bet these in the middle of the season. But there was a 40 pack of Spencer's favorite player prop picks. And Guru, before we go, let's talk a little bit back in the fantasy world. Any news that caught your eye from the first weekend of preseason games that has affected your opinions?
Yeah, there's some running back news I'd like to address as far as these rookies on the rise. The Commanders rookie Brian Robinson, very much on the rise. Antonio Gibson in the doghouse working with the third string offense today. Which I'm not saying he's banished to third string, but I am saying it's not a good sign. The coaching staff's definitely upset with him. Where that's going to be a committee. There's no denying it. And where now it's one of those things where you can still get Robinson at a good price in drafts. And I'm glad I didn't touch Gibson in any of my early drafts because his stock is plummeting. A similar situation in Kansas City. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's stock isn't plummeting like Gibson's, but it's definitely not looking good with the rookie Isaiah Pacheco really looking good in the preseason and showing like he's somebody that could be pretty good in pass protection. Might be able to, I think he'll at least leapfrog Jerick McKinnon as the number 3 and probably Ronald Jones as the number 2. And we all know how injury prone CEH is, to where if you take a shot at Pacheco in the 11th, 12th round, it could pay off.
And on the flip side on that, I guess, a guy like Travis Etienne, I've got my eye on him.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I've been getting him. I mean, some people been getting on me for pulling him up too high. I get him a lot of times in 12 man. I get him in the 3rd round, and I tell you, that's the price you got to pay now for Travis, because he's no secret. I mean, there's no secret that he's in line for a big year. I mean, James Robinson's still there, but he's coming off an Achilles, and I believe Travis is the superior talent. So I'm all in with him. He's one of my guys for this season, so hopefully he pays off. It's just one of those things where I'm pretty much paying. As that's about as high as I'm willing to pay. If he goes any higher, I'm sorry I can't get him. But it's just I'm willing to pay up some though. Third round, as him and Breece Hall are two guys I'm willing to reach on a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Etienne is a guy I wanted to bring up because of what you said, where he's getting more reps in camp. It feels a little bit, and this is not a perfect comparison because, look, the injury last year, you haven't actually seen him in an NFL uniform. It feels a little bit like Alvin Kamara in 2018, where it was his second year in the league, and you can get sort of ahead of the curve if you're willing to pay that premium. And I won a couple leagues that year because of Alvin Kamara, and I had just moved to Louisiana. Most of them were with people who were not from Louisiana. They didn't realize how good this guy was. In fact, I think I picked him up off waivers in 2017, and you start to realize this guy is playing a different game than the other backs in that offense.
Yeah, it was funny. I always remember his rookie year in 17. It was a three-headed committee at first with him, Mark Ingram, and Adrian Peterson. And Adrian Peterson was with the Saints, and we know how that experiment went, a complete flop. And it all went awry when he started yelling at Sean Payton on the sideline. It's like, dude, I know you're a future Hall of Famer, but you're the third wheel in that backfield. I mean, you got the Alvin Kamara, who we've seen has been an all-pro level running back, and then Mark Ingram at that time was still very good. And so, yeah, there just wasn't enough room for old AP. But, yeah, I mean, Kamara's just – it's pretty cool to see how his journey's gone. Just hopefully he can avoid that suspension, man. I mean, it's just kind of it's still a little risky, thinking that the news – there's actually some news that came out yesterday that I think we mentioned it on Bayou Bets about how his suspension's looking like it won't hit for this season, which is good news for this year. But it's one of those things. I don't think it's just gonna go away. I still think he's gonna have to serve a few game suspension at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he will at some point. The question is whether it's going to be this year, and it's looking more and more, as you said, like it'll be next year. So that's a guy. If you're willing to take that risk, you can get a first-round talent, a high first-round talent, maybe a little bit lower in the draft if you're willing to make that bet. So. That is it for the Fantasy Roundup on this Tuesday. We'll be back with you at 2:00 next Tuesday as we continue our countdown to the season. A lot more drafts rolling in, I'm sure, over the next couple of weeks. And next week we may just do some draft strategy because I think there's going to be a ton of drafts to follow over the weekend.
Yeah, values and bust. Yeah, I'm
26th and 27th, and how you can structure your drafts, right? Like if you start two running backs, what do you do after that? If you start receiver running back, what do you do? If you're going zero RB, what do you do? Just different strategies, ways you can structure your roster based on the way your draft goes. So that's what we'll do next Tuesday on the Fantasy Roundup as more and more fantasy football drafts get going. Until then, catch us on Thursday at 4 p.m. for the next episode of Bayou Bets, preview Saints Packers, and a whole lot of other stuff. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us here on the Fantasy Roundup.